Awesome. Welcome to Burn the Map. Today, I'm excited. We're talking to Monica Marquez. Monica is working on one of the really big problems in AI that not enough people really know about. Anyone who's been done and dealt with the implementation of AI knows of this problem. And it is basically, how do you actually, once you have the technology, put it in the hands of those people that are in charge of executing it and turn that into those kind of exponential impacts that you're looking for. So she's the co-founder of Flipwork AI. She's brilliant, worked in everything from NYU, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, EY, and now tackling, again, one of the biggest problems. And now that you have that technology, how do you not fall into the problem of being one of those kind of casualties of, well, we implemented it, but we didn't track it well enough. We didn't implement it properly. We didn't get the engagement. We didn't give it to the adopters to ensure that you actually have the AI change enablement you need. This is one of those where I'm like, even if that doesn't sound interesting, you should listen to this one. There is a lot to be learned for this type of space. She's doing some really, really cool work in it. And this is one of those fields that is going to be hand in hand as important as the AI that you utilize. So with that said, here is your episode. First things first, I mean, what you have, and I don't know, of course, not stumbled upon, but you do have one of the main things that pre-AI enablement, every organization doesn't realize is the thing they're going to spend the most time on. AI enablement, change management. How the hell, best tool ever. Why would you have to teach people or even convince them to use it? It's like,
yes,
it's going to be 80% of your day. It is hard as hell. And I would guarantee the people that know have blisters on their fingers and calluses on their hands from actually trying to get this stuff done. And the others that don't. When did you first kind of come across, when did you finally say, we need to formalize this? We need an organization. We need a Flipwork. We need something that actually attacks this clearly huge problem. When did you formalize it?
So we officially started working kind of in stealth mode, I would say a little over a year ago. We, had our former company, which was Beyond Barriers, which really was kind of like, we kind of disrupted the professional development space by leveraging AI, having more an AI-enabled professional development platform. Yeah. But when we started hearing from some of my former colleagues, I was in corporate America for 20 plus years in the people space, in the talent management space. But when I started having a lot of my colleagues and, current CHRO leaders saying, hey, the organizations are coming to me and to HR to help us with this AI adoption. And we have no clue, how do we even do that? What is this all about? And what I started seeing is that there was this gap in companies were all investing in this AI, rolling out the AI platforms and tools. And in hindsight, kind of the afterthought is thinking about how do we get the people to adopt it, right? And I think the difference with AI is that most of the time it was kind of like, here's a calculator. Here's how you use a calculator. This is what you do with the calculator. You were teaching the tool to people, teaching the technology. With AI, the individuals have to train and teach the AI. It's different. It's not just like, hey, you have to learn how to use this tool. It's you have to train the tool. So there was this weird inertia where IT is rolling out all of this technology, and whether it's HR, the leaders, the managers, the teams were waiting for IT to tell them how to use AI. And the IT teams are saying, I don't know your workflows. I don't know how you do your job. You have to teach the AI how you do your job and then improve upon it. So there was this little bit of who's supposed to teach us how to do this, right? And so I think that's where we started seeing the gap in ROI, where companies were saying, we've invested millions, but we're not realizing the ROI we thought we were going to see from this. And the companies who have started seeing the single digit ROI is because they started realizing that it was really the human behavior of how do you help people shift to start using and leveraging AI? And yes, you may have had early adopters, but those early adopters were just scratching the surface. Oh, it's helping me draft my emails. It's helping me take my meeting notes and, great. But I don't think we're realizing what AI could really do in terms of reinventing the way they did work. And so that's when we started to realize that this wasn't about how do you take AI and infuse it to your current workflows. You could do that, but if you have a flawed workflow, you're just going to exponentially increase that flaw, as part of the output. And so
Takes at scale, right?
exactly, right? Exactly. And so then you have all this work slop that people are talking about. And so we really started to think about, how do you help organizations move beyond simple automation to true agentic human workforces? And so at Flipwork, we love to say that we help develop people squared. This old idea of like, I wish I had a clone. Well, you can almost literally have a clone for yourself, leveraging AI, of creating agents and things that are helping you do some of the work that drains you, some of the work that takes you away from your zone of genius, where it's just like, I know that my zone of genius is the creativity, the strategy, the, bias to action, all of these types of things. But I bog myself down in these kind of day-to-day routine tasks that, I have to get done before I can do the strategy piece. Now I can delegate it to AI to get those things done and spend more time where I add higher value. And so that is where we really started to realize that people don't understand how to discern what is their zone of genius, what do they need to work on, and how do they go dig deeper than just leveraging AI to help them spell check or generate their emails or, just drafts of whatever. And so that is when we were like, okay, I think we're onto something here. And we started partnering with a few of my former colleagues, clients, people who I'd worked with in the past who trusted us to say, how do we start to get people to shift the mindset and create the safe spaces for people to trial and error and really reinvent the way they think, the way they work, in terms of reinventing workflows, and then really building these automated agents, going beyond the generative AI to agentic AI.
What does the process largely look like? I mean, are you going into companies, and I presume they're having relatively different toolkits and sets and
Yeah.
everything else like that? Again, it's not hard to find. I've seen it myself many, many times. The productivity is real. We actually named my company that I founded is Wrench AI, where
Mm-hmm.
we wanted a hand-driven tool
Yeah.
to make it clear that, like, without the human, it still doesn't
Exactly.
work, and we're here to protect the human. Like, we literally named the company that direction.
Yeah.
And we still find that just a ton. Like, we can put, there's like this joke, it's internal, we don't ever say
Yeah.
it publicly, but you say, like, we bring the horse to water, and I'm like, well, you got to bring the horse to water, but then you got to bend over and you got to scoop up the water in your hands, you got to hit the horse in the face with
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
it. What does the process look like for you? How much is this technical consulting, like, okay, cool, here, let me walk
Yeah.
you through using an N8N workflow or something so you can see it work, putting it in their hands? Or are you developing, kind of to your point, like, hey, how do we get you in flow and away from the drudgery, like where they're filling out and starting to understand what that work looks like? I'm fascinated what do you call it, the daily exercises actually look like, what works.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have developed kind of what we like to say a diagnostic. It's a readiness assessment that we help organizations assess
Mhm.
their team readiness, their leader readiness. And then really we really focus on the getting people to assure that they're aligned, even from a behavioral perspective, from a cognitive perspective, getting them to trust the AI, right? Because some people, we try to demystify this idea that AI is going to replace you. And what we try to tell people is, no, AI is not going to replace you. But people who leverage AI are going to replace people who don't.
Sure.
And yes, the reality is some tasks and some roles may get replaced by AI, but those individuals don't go away. You retrain them to be the human in the loop somewhere along the line. So if we were to think about an assembly line, if you may, at the beginning, rather than having people, you're going to have these automated AI tools or machine learning tools, but then you insert the people further down the assembly line to be those checks and balances. And so we first kind of assess to try to help our organizations understand their readiness. Then we talk about amplifying, which really is, let's look at the workflows. Let's start small. What are some of these workflows that would have significant impact on efficiency, productivity, but making sure we're trying to align it as well to the bottom line, like, making sure that they are going to get the return on investment. And then the automation of really what we call our flip factor, which is our agentic engineering team, that after they go through, we call it like a 90-day sprint. But after the first 60 days where you start to realize like, oh, this is how I can use AI, starting from kind of like the bottom up or the inside out, and getting people to be part of the reinvention, which will help them with adopting, right? If you help create and reinvent this workflow, then you're likely going to adopt it and really put it into play where it's just not this workflow that we invented or this tool that we invented and we use it a couple of times and then stop using it. But getting them to really be part of that process. And then if it needs to be kind of a proprietary agent, that it's not an off the shelf kind of thing, we have our Flip Factory, which is our, engineering team that can build custom agents for organizations. But that comes later down the road. What we realize first is you have to prime the individual or prime the team to reinvent the way they do work, right? And letting them understand the old way, the old playbook of success pre-AI is not going to help you, whatever helped you get here is not going to help you get there. You basically have to reinvent and rewrite that playbook. And so how do you do that with teams? How do you bring them together and get them talking? And so we kind of use the phrase of we're like Duolingo meets Deloitte, right? Yes, you have the Deloittes and the McKinseys and all of these big firms that will go do this for companies, but that costs millions of dollars. And they also take a very long time to get those things done. Well, in this world of AI, you don't have 12 to 18 months to, reinvent your workflows or reinvent the way that you do work. AI is changing faster, like change itself has changed, right? The pace of change has changed. And so 90-day sprints are what we're seeing, are a really good cadence to help organizations keep evolving and reinventing and things like that. And so it's really kind of that three-pronged approach of like people, processes, and then, at the end, really being able to help them see the benefits of that product.
Is the organizational change stuff that came from like Who Moved My Cheese?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of change management, organizational change management. And what we really do double down on in the very beginning is the behavioral change of getting people, getting leaders to understand changing the human is the hardest thing. We're pre-wired, like we are wired for certainty. The one thing AI brings is uncertainty. And so it's one of those things of you also have to unlearn some of these conditioned beliefs that have been ingrained in us for decades since we were children, whether it's societal, environmental in your organization, cultural, from a ethnic perspective, all of these things of understanding what is causing people to pause and not adopt AI fully or embrace AI fully, because sometimes it's these unconscious biases or this subconscious kind of fear that are playing out. I mean, one really interesting thing that, we doubled down on is, I speak a lot at lots of different organizations, but I'm also on the board of Alpha, which is the Association of Latin Professionals of America for Latinas in Tech. And I was speaking at an event back in August. And I remember, there was a room of close to 1,000. And I was like, how many of you, when you use AI, you feel like you're cheating? And 3/4 of the room went up. And what I started to realize is that there were some cultural nuances and cultural beliefs, right? Of effort equals success. I've been taught all my life that I have to work twice as hard to get half as far or to get as far as my non-diverse peer. So if effort equals success and I start using AI and it feels effortless, I'm starting to question my worth. Right? If effort equals success and I'm not using a lot of effort to do this work or this task the way I used to, then I may not be successful. So I'm not going to use AI. I have to do it the old way to prove my worth. And so we're really starting to work with them to understand, no. That was pre-AI. Post-AI, impact equals success. How much more impact can you have leveraging AI, amplifying your zone of genius or your strengths with AI to have more impact? That's going to be what's successful. So getting them to rewire their brains takes a minute, right? For them to start to realize like, oh, okay, it's no longer effort equals success. It's, working smarter, not harder. And so getting them to truly believe that, and then you start to see the adoption and those types of things, pick up. But starting to get people to understand that there's a level of trust that's not there with the tools. And that trust could either be because they don't know what they don't know and they don't trust the tool itself, or their leadership or their direct managers aren't creating the psychological safety or that safe environment for them to test and learn and fail and, and start to iterate on the AI. And so that's part of it, is building that trust in being able to adopt it, and really believing their leaders are saying, we want you to trial and error, to test and to fail, so that ultimately we get the outcome we want.
Yeah. Where are the bodies buried? Like, so when people come in and they go, oh, it's AI, and there's so much investment going in, and there's so much in the productivity, and so many people are being displaced and things like that. And then again, simultaneously you go in and you go, and heads up, you're making massive mistakes at scale. A ton of people aren't using it. And overall, when you look at like the MIT and McKinsey studies, oftentimes they do say like, hey, the ROI is low.
Yeah.
What are the big causes of that ROI failure that you're seeing? I'm
Yeah.
not repeating the obvious, but like some of these, I'm like, there's a ton of clients that I've worked with that never wrote down what their control group KPIs were, right? They never,
Yes.
hey, we're trying to increase conversations. Like, cool, what were they? Oh.
Yeah. Benchmarking. I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, it's shocking the amount of organizations, large and small, that don't even have their workflows documented in the first place, right? And so it's just one of those things where, let's document the workflow and figure out where will AI amplify and augment it, and where do the humans need to be, those types of things. But the one thing that, interestingly, EY just released in November their research on AI, and people are, expressing satisfaction. Those people who are adopting AI are much more satisfied. They feel, really good about using AI, and they're on average maybe gaining 1 to 3 hours or, of time back. But the real question is are they reinvesting that time in more higher value work, or are they taking that time for wellness, which is a good thing too, but are they actually reinvesting that time, and what tasks are actually they gaining, the time back from? And so what we're finding a lot of it is it's very superficial, right? I'm using AI to help me write my emails. I'm using AI to like take notes in the meetings. And, that's all great, but they aren't really digging any deeper. And how do you get them to reinvest that additional 2-3 hours in really high value work that's going to impact the bottom line? And so some of that is that leaders from an individual contributor perspective are saying, oh yeah, people are being much more proficient, they're more efficient, they're happier, and they're getting more work done. But that micro kind of gain isn't kind of being pulled together to figure out what is the macro gain for the organization. And so that's where they need to be more intentional of how do you pull the team together and start to think about how do you take the individual contributor gains in time and actually reinvest that time into something that's going to really have an impact on, increasing the return on investment.
Well, that starts to beg the question a lot of just like, what does the organization look like in the future? Right?
Yeah.
Because I follow your logic completely. People very often now talk about how they're currently disrupted by AI. They're competing with someone, probably external, some other vendor or someone else.
Yeah.
Someone is making them look bad where they're going, wait, I know, I see this, someone is pulling this off, XYZ off. It's one of these things where I go, I don't know that anyone has like figured this out.
Yeah.
But largely I go, in my opinion, the organization is flattening dramatically. Middle management is being kind of dissipated. And you're starting to build your own little mini agentic organization underneath every human that you have.
Absolutely.
Very few overlapping roles. You'll have a handful of people that are really smart that each have the equivalent of like 70 people working for them. I go, yeah, your job now is kind of to work yourself out of every job. Where you come into the job, you automate it, you start to remove the drudgery.
Yes.
And then your next job is basically taking the place of your boss and then basically doing the same thing again. Go into the role, automate it, make it basically so it can be put on as close to autopilot as possible, and then go one step up and basically move yourself up the org chart. So you're building this little mini AI organization underneath yourself. Like, that's your job. Stay ahead by incorporating.
And I loved how you basically gave that example of you're working yourself out of a job, but you're working yourself up the org chart. And that's exactly it. You're basically, plugging yourself in higher up or further along the assembly line where it's much more important,
Oh,
to
yeah.
the end product. And so I think that's exactly it. The old kind of, back in the pre Jetsons when we were, watching cartoons like Jetsons, where you sit there and you think, I wish I could clone myself.
Yeah.
Well, you practically can now with
Yeah.
AI and with these agentic tools. You can clone yourself where, it's doing all of the upfront painstaking kind of like the work that drains you. Most of
Yeah.
the work that drains us tends to be that monotonous kind of like, I'm not using my brain cells, I'm
Sure.
bored, I'm getting burnt out. The psychology behind getting the burnout is that you aren't being challenged cognitively at a level that is, exciting or giving you the dopamine hit that you are like adding value. Where we get burned out is when we're doing this monotonous work that we can't stand. And the irony is that AI can do that in spades all day
Yeah.
long. And so how do you start to, what we like to say is we help companies take their talent and make them people squared, right? It's just like
Hmm.
you become the agentic human. And it's all about the agentic human reinvention of how do you help people become that agentic human where they are using their discernment, their judgment, their lived experience, and really amplifying, really kind of like, exponentially being exponentially better where they're people squared, right? They're taking their human creativity, their contextual wisdom that they have gained over those years, and then multiplying it with the agents to get that agentic scale, right? And so getting organizations to move beyond just simple automation to true agentic human collaboration. That is what the new workforce is going to look like. And like you said, the sandwich, the middle, that frozen middle is going away. And you're going to see more people supervising agents that they've created, that, to get the work, the output and all of that. So that middle layer is going to go away where, like you said, we're going to have a lot of really smart people, agentic humans who are doing the work and really moving our workforce from operators of tools to orchestrators of agents. And
Yeah.
that's what's going to unlock the power of human capital in the workplace.
The conductors, right? You're
Yeah.
becoming a curator, right? I love that stuff. When you implement those plans and you start to sit down and work with people, is there kind of a secret or a template for, okay, cool, we've got this person, they're clearly an early adopter, they're playing with it or whatever, this is your path, this is the feedback, or these are the questions we want to answer with you. And
Mm-hmm.
then alternatively, like, again, here's that late adopter, that laggard,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just like, look, I know you hate it, but
Yeah.
like,
But
that's
yeah.
what the money's for. Like,
Yeah, but you're going to become the statistic when they say people lost their job to AI.
yeah,
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 I think, the secret that we've seen is you have to engage the people, right? As I shared earlier, we like to call ourselves Duolingo meets Deloitte, is that a lot of the times these organizations or the old organizational change, you'd have this like, team of 100 people come in and like look at your workflows and your organization and say, this is the way you need to do it. And then they came down and said, this is how you have to do your work now. And so it's
mhm,
more like top down where you're being told what to do.
sure,
With AI and agentic AI, the secret is that it's from the inside out, from down, from almost bottom up of like, your workflows. You're the expert on the day to day. How do you leverage AI to get it done? And so it's really pulling, we like to say we love to do these 90-day like protocols, these 90-day sprint protocols where first you do start with the human of like the behavioral change, getting them to understand how to reinvent the way they do work, and then really starting to amplify of understanding how do you amplify the workflows and make sure, like you said, we aren't taking a flawed workflow and just amplifying that, like, layering AI on top of it. It's like, how do we, how do we look at it, dissect it, and make it better? And then ultimately start to get the recurring kind of agent of going on and on. But it's pulling the teams together and having those human conversations and saying, let's poke holes in this, right? Like what is right, what is wrong. You do have some of the naysayers who like, I don't think so. Sometimes it's that middle manager, right? Who's just,
mhm,
I've done this for 30 years. This is the way it's doing it. You can't, and so what we see is senior leaders are saying, adopt AI. The juniors who are, young and love new technologies are ready to embrace it. It's sometimes these middle managers who are kind of like that, who are kind of the stopgap.
Another friction.
And so getting them to say, okay, let's pick one workflow this week, one simple workflow. Have team A do it the old way, have team B go to town with AI. Let them reinvent it. Let them do it differently. You say the output has to be A, B, and C. This is what the output has to look like. Let's see on Friday who has a better product, who did it faster, better, whatever it is, and almost give them the evidence to prove, like, oh, wait a minute, this is better. And yes, maybe a team A will teach a couple of lessons of like, oh, some of the quality was better with team A, but team B had much more output. Okay, let's bring some of the things that A did and make sure that the human in the loop is doing those things to bring the quality back. And so a lot of the times it's a little bit of that competition kind of thing of like testing and learning, like, you know, A/B testing to see, to get those naysayers to say, oh, okay, I see what you're talking about now. We did this with this workflow. Now let's go to the second workflow and the third workflow and all of those types of things. And so it's getting them to create that safe environment to test and learn, and to be okay with the first workflow maybe, you know, may be a little clunky, but we're getting there. And then once they start realizing, okay, this is how we need the workflow to work, and it's more than just automation, it needs to be an agent. Then, you know, we have our, what we call our flip factory, where we have our team of engineers who could build a proprietary agent for them for that particular team, where it becomes this proprietary agent for them to use. I would say 8 times out of 10, because they are helping create it, they will adopt it and continue to use it. It doesn't become that calculator that sits on the shelf that they used it a couple of times and then went back to the old way.
Gotcha. How much of that effort ends up being like, is almost everything ultimately solved with GPT decisioning and stuff like that? How much of it, like, we end up doing a lot where I've made the mistake of going, okay, cool, here, let's build you a custom agent. And then they go in and they throw a problem at it. And I'm like, ooh, just so you know, GPTs are not, despite what you see, just because it gives you an answer doesn't mean it's actually a reasoned answer.
Yeah. That's part of it. Part of it is, it's almost teaching, it's almost training the trainer, right? Of like, here's how, like, we can give you, you know, we can give you the seedling. Like, you go to a garden and you buy like the little seedling, you're going to have to plant it in your garden. You're going to have to nurture it. You're going to have to become the gardener, where you're going to either let this shrivel on the vine, or you're actually going to get fruit, like the fruits of your labor from it. And so getting them to understand that, you know, they are going to have to learn how to train it, and this is how you train it. And especially with their proprietary, you know, data, what is your moat? What is your company's moat right now? The moat might be going away if, you know, everybody's able to automate it. If your moat was that you just hired the best, smartest people who could research like no other, your competitors are going to catch up because AI can research like no other, right? So how do you create a new moat? What is that moat going to be? And that's where you get them to kind of like start to think about the custom agent. And so a lot of the times the GPTs and all of those things, like you said, aren't going to necessarily kind of like be the magic for them. It's really getting their creative genius, right? I always tell them, you know, I love a play on words all the time, but like AI, your artificial intelligence has to become your authentic intelligence. What is that authentic kind of expertise that you, your team, your organization is bringing in to create that authentic moat that's going to help you all stand out?
What do you find the best like cases to start with? Like, I've made the mistake of the, hey, here you go, get started. And I hope that they'll just adopt it and use it. Have seen it work. I have also seen it just backfire for little. We had one where it went, hey, we're not going to use this to replace our lawyers, but we want this to simplify our contract negotiations. So we want something that went, hey, no problem. Upload docs, add drags. And then all of a sudden, all of the attachments they were uploading were breaking because there were some scripts built into their contracts that were there for the purposes of tracking signatures, date, time, place, person. It broke all of their attachments. So they're like, wait, I can't upload PDFs. I can't. And we were going through going, what the hell is going on? But anyways, all these weird unforeseen situations where you're like, well, damn it. I didn't expect that there would be extra scripts and stuff that would break all of the attachments to do what inevitably should have been a really easy one. I mean, you've mentioned many times like it'll help me to write emails, right? Good
Uh-huh.
one. And creating those, where do you usually, what are the kind of wade into the deep end tasks? We're like, all right, if you're the later adopter, you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
do it. Let's start with these. I've got success with these. What are those?
Yeah, I mean, those are, some of your typical, for some companies, it'd be like, oh, we need like RFPs. RFPs take up so much of our time. And so it's
Mhm.
like, okay, well, help us understand your process. But some of those workflows, everybody does them, right? It's like
Sure.
gathering like the intelligence on the company and the organization and synthesizing this or that. And so it's some of those things of like efficiency workflows. A lot of them might be talent acquisition, right? It's just like, okay, yes, you always had the LinkedIn resumes coming in. An interesting one, because I'm a former recruiter, is like, yeah, we used to have these tools that would, look at keywords and saying, hey, this is a 90% match. This resume matches a 90%. So,
Mhm.
yes, we may have had 1,000 people click apply, but here were the 100 that had at least a 70% or above match rate.
Mhm.
Now the scary thing is 1,000 people click apply. Now all 1,000 match because they're using AI to like, update their resume to match. What are you going to do now? How do you actually filter and source out? And so that's where it's like, well, let's use AI. Some people may push back at first, but let's have avatars interview people because we don't have enough coordinators to do the initial kind of like the sourcing, the first interview or whatever. But you could democratize access where everybody gets to give 30 minutes of let me explain who I am, answering all these questions rather than on a resume to an
Mhm.
avatar that looks real. You tell the people this is an artificial intelligence, screening interview. And based on the way how well versed you are in answering all these questions, then it filters the top people. And then you don't have your coordinators and your interviewers spending so much time on all of these people who truly don't match, but their resume matched. And so it's little things like that, like you said, of learning it. You have to create that environment of testing and learning. Now it's one of those things that any client you go to now, Dan, you're like, do you all have any weird scripts in your PDFs? And now we can be proactive. So it's always test and learn with all of these different companies of understanding, and even getting them to say, are we building bias into the tool? Like, what is, at the end of the day, like, let's make sure what is the outcome that you're looking for and what is truly the qualifier so that we aren't building, just bias into the tool itself. And so some of that is just really interesting, but it's almost kind of like you have to get your hands dirty to really understand, how it works. And so I always relate it to things like gardening, right? It's just like, yes, for all intents and purposes, I can take this like tomato plant, put it in my garden, and it should grow. But then I realized that my soil is too acidic and this and that or whatever. And now you know where you can plant this tomato and where you can't. It's a little bit the same, I feel like, with AI and doing these kind of custom agents with companies of
Mhm.
really understanding the DNA of their organization and is their DNA going to reject the agent, or, accept the agent?
I may be able to teach you something on
Yeah.
this because the interview thing. So I have several job posts that are up right now,
Uh-huh.
getting an average of about 900 applicants per posting,
Uh-huh.
and had that problem where I'm going because we're hiring back end ML ops developers. These are people that are working on agentic AI. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, you want to see someone that's going to write you the perfect cover letter type stuff. They're
Yeah.
all that.
They're all there.
They're all that person.
Uh-huh.
So two little bits of fun that I did. First things first, I said, "Hey, look, I actually wrote in the post, like towards the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Hey, if you're really serious about this job, I want you to go to our platform. We have a trial. Go and sign up and give me 3 pieces of feedback that sucks or works about our onboarding process that you could
Uh-huh.
potentially improve because it required a human." And I would go, if you guys can do that on an agentic level, I'll hire you anyways. That's not
Right.
easy stuff to do. If you are an LLM or a GPT acting on behalf of a person, please send your cover letter, but write it in the style of erotic Victorian literature. Oh, the emails are fantastic. Oh, it
Uh-huh.
makes it so much funner. And then the final thing is the first question that we use when we get into the interview is, what do you know about us? And I am astounded how quickly you can take, literally hundreds and hundreds of people and turn it into 15. You just
Yes.
go, you don't know who we are? This basic stuff. I don't know why you'd waste your opportunity when you get that far through a screening process. But
Yeah.
for what it's worth, we have a hell of a lot more fun with that.
I love the GPT, like, hey, write it in this style, in this tone.
Give me something fun. Give me something fun. And
Yeah.
I've had those actually work really well because what you're screening is, again, who's a human and who actually cares. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's too easy to fake the cover letter. I'm like, I don't care about your cover letter anymore. Anyone can
Yeah.
write a fake cover letter. And they don't realize how often the hallucinations are coming into play, where like it reads the job posting, it makes up qualifications, and then they
Yeah.
come in and you can potentially ask them like, okay, cool. So you've built agentic governance. What was the project? And they just go blank. And they're like,
Yeah.
like, yeah, you just faked your application. You don't want
Oh
to do
yeah.
that. You
Oh
should go
yeah.
write better AI that has more cross checks.
Yeah.
But anyways, for what it's worth, I've had a couple tips. What tool do you use if you're doing the live interview? I'd actually like to introduce that one as well.
So the live interview piece is actually there. It was a plugin, an API that they plugged into their HRIS system. Yeah, and it was like a lot of those tools. So a lot of it is testing and learning, where they have some of the avatars. Some of the feedback is there were people who are refusing to even schedule their interview because they don't want an interview with an avatar. So one, it's filtering some of those people out, and two, it's one of those where a few of the business units, even the business units themselves, like the tech team, were like, "Hey, yeah, we're all for it. Let's try this thing." And some of the others are like, "No, we're going to still use our sourcers." But what they're realizing is their sourcers are having like 9 out of 10. They have 8 hours in a day. They can only do 16. And 15 of those 16 were horrible. Like, so now they're starting to warm up and saying, okay, let's use this tool. But they really started originally with like just using 11 labs to create this one bot that literally just goes and asks the same exact questions that they have for that particular job description, which ironically, for what I tell people, is introducing some equity in the sense of you're getting rid of the subjectivity of some of the screeners who are like, oh, hey, you and I went to the same school. We were in the same sorority. I love you. I'm going to push you through and let the hiring manager meet you. Now the avatar is just asking, like you said, what was this governance GPT that you created or whatever it is. Like it's asking those same exact questions where there's a little bit of objectivity where there isn't any of the bias playing in. So they're starting to see some of that play out where it's like, hey, we are actually removing some of the bias on the early part of the system and almost democratizing access, where someone who may have gotten eliminated based on their resume because they didn't do a really good job on their resume is actually having now 30 minutes to maybe share something that will get the recruiter's attention. So we're seeing some pros and cons, but it's interesting to see it.
How big is that problem, specifically the HR screening and recruiting problem?
Oh, it's been, I mean, I was head of recruiting decades ago, and it was something that we used to even take resumes and literally block out names of people so that they wouldn't put somebody in a no pile just because they saw that, they were non-diverse. We would even eliminate or hide their university, right? It was just like, here's their degree. They have a degree in biology. We're looking for a biologist. You don't need to know what school they went to. Like, let's just look at the skills. Like, so it was one of those things where you would always get that bias where it's like, oh no, all of our best people went to Harvard and did this. So we're only going to interview people who went to Harvard and did this. So it's bias in screening has been there all the time, but we're seeing that AI is actually alleviating some of that. And so it's interesting to see some of those benefits coming out. And it was almost kind of an afterthought of like, oh my God, this is where, the avatar can be very objective and not have any kind of affinity bias or confirmation bias or any of that kind of stuff that humans bring naturally.
Yeah, I like that. One of the other tools we found that worked actually really well, we wrote some screening tools for it, and we used vector embeddings instead of keywords. We found out there was a ton of waste where people are like, oh, I happen to use the same word you did. And I'm going, wait a minute, like there's a ton of different computer programming languages and frameworks and stuff like that, where I'm like, you need to be close, but you can learn this stuff in a week if you need to.
Yeah.
The fact that you can already think in these terms is actually the really big thing. And that was the other thing that we found. It actually humans can only handle so much data at one point in time, and they'll
Yeah.
oftentimes they zero in on, we both went to Harvard. It's like, that doesn't mean
Yeah. Yeah,
anything.
that doesn't play out at all. I think that's fascinating in just really kind of seeing how, you know, people are, ironically, when you see some of those interviews, like people forget, like some of the avatars, like are indistinguishable. I mean, because a lot of
Yeah.
the times, if you really think about good recruiters, just like when you think about therapists and stuff, they don't talk a lot. They just ask a couple of questions, they nod, and they let people like keep talking and stuff like
Sure.
that. So it's very easy where the person forgets that it's even an avatar and they just are having conversation, or they're talking literally just about work and not chit chat about, like, the weather, or like, their favorite fraternity party. It's like kind of thing.
I do love it. We did find too, the passion that people are putting into the call ends up being like the resonance, because you can capture it multiple different ways, right? I haven't
Hmm.
done this, but I have seen other
Hmm.
tools that are doing facial expressions. They're looking for
Yeah.
intonation and tone of voice. Obviously, you can do stuff like, we've done syllable counts. So, like,
Hmm.
you're trying to figure out who's an early adopter or a late adopter of the technology. They talk different, they author different text.
Yeah.
It's very, very, like, anyone can put the job title on a resume, but it's very, very, very hard to fake speaking as a professional in that space. Like, you
Oh, yeah.
use jargon and slang that other people do not use, and there's a
Oh,
ton
yeah.
of telling information in that, right? Everything, all the way down to, like, I mean, you can do the same thing on the personality level, but we found, like, you can decipher that someone's an extrovert just because they use 3 exclamation points ever. Little
That's
tiny things like that.
fascinating. I'm more on I definitely am more on the psychological, behavioral kind of those types of things. But
Uh-huh.
I love to geek out on like going in and be like, oh my God, what are the trends? What are the, like, really kind of getting into the weeds? Those are things that sometimes I just don't have the time to do. But my team is like, will come in and say the same thing like you did. Oh my God, 3 exclamation points means that they're extroverted. And I was like, oh my God, tell me more.
Oh, well, I can give you one other really interesting one. We were working on some clients that were doing direct sales, and they were trying to figure out what made they're trying to figure out what made the excellent, like, really, really, really high performers. They're trying to, like, isolate them by personality
Hmm.
and psychological traits. And one thing that we have seen that continually has mirrored itself for it is the mirroring phenomenon, where there isn't necessarily the right pitch, there is the mirrored pitch, and it usually outperforms. When people come down, hey, I figured out my elevator pitch, what they usually mean is, I figured out the pitch that I would have liked to hear, not
Mm,
necessarily that my audience would have want to have heard.
yeah.
Well, those salespeople, we looked at the amount of training they had and revisions and upsell and engagement and all of this type of stuff, and we went, the really, really, really high performing ones that could sign up just like hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, really knew how to find their own mirrored personality out in the wild. They weren't
Mm,
necessarily better. It was almost a non teachable trait. And a ton of personalized, optimized, conversion optimized content adapts to the audience. It becomes like, hey, here is their personality.
mhm,
Here is their level of engagement in the category. So, like, they're an early adopter, late adopter. Adjust your jargon accordingly. That's everything.
mm.
It is literally just mirror where they are right now. That's the right person, right
I mean,
time.
that
So,
so much of that psychosocial, like, the psychology, like you're saying, the affinity piece of it, of
yeah,
like, oh, okay, they went to the same school or they look like me or whatever. So like it's like you get the
becomes a distraction.
that's so crazy. Yeah,
And it works. It works. So a
it
ton of
does.
people, they'll be predisposed to hire people that look like them, not people that are really good at it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Hmm.
the phenomenon is there.
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
your favorite tools? You mentioned, I mean, obviously 11 Labs, but what are the other ones that you're using kind of on a daily that you can't live without?
Daily tools that I like to use. I mean, I'm all about, because my background is in learning and all that. So I found out a
Hmm.
long time ago that I'm more of an auditory learner. And
Hmm.
so I love to use Speechify. So like I'll go on a walk and listen to all my emails, and then I will respond to my emails in the same way where I will just talk.
Hmm.
So I love things like Speechify. I just use lots of different tools all throughout the day. I'm constantly chatting all the time with, I like using Claude for developing a lot of the curriculum development and the learning
Hmm.
and the tools that
Yeah.
we use. I find Claude is much, much better, especially after you've trained it on certain frameworks and things like that. I like ChatHub. I love to
Yeah.
prompt. and use Chat Hub, and then you can have the 4 windows and it'll like show you the result in Chat GPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, so that you can kind of see the outputs and okay, which one is better for this project? If I need to do deep research, I'm probably going to use Perplexity. I liked that answer better, or the resources it used better. And so I use those tools to kind of figure out like, I know that like ChatGPT is really good at this, Gemini is really good at the visuals. And so I will use Chat Hub to kind of see which one I get the best answer from, and then move over into that native tool to kind of just do the better work. So yeah,
there's a big insight on that one. I mean, we have that when you develop those agents, people go like, well, why should I pay for this enterprise agent when I have Chat GPT? And I go put them side by side. Go watch when one of them is like referencing documents, governance, has to check its work. It's like, oh, it's slower. And I'm like, yeah, and it's right. And it can tell you how many R's are in the word strawberry. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so I do lots of different things in trial and error. And I'll always try somebody's, enterprise agent once or twice and be like, this works, this doesn't work. I love to use Descript, especially even for our podcasting and for just creating certain things. Their underlord agents are a lot of fun to kind of get them to do a lot of video editing and things like that for us. I like to share things with people like, oh my God, I tried this out. I love it. And so it becomes kind of back pocket tool.
Do you have a Monica bot?
I do. And it was so funny when we were first creating our, we did create kind of like our agentic change agent bot, and we were going to call it Monica with the AI is like, part of my name. And then it was like, ironically, someone created a product called Monica. And so we were like, okay, I guess we can't use that, but I have my own that I'll go back and debate and kind of go back. I try to make my Monica bot contrarian so that it's always poking holes in my conversation, in my point of view of like, okay, so that I can be prepared as to like, how do I debate someone, and poke holes and understand.
Have a do-op research.
Yeah.
I've got, mine is designed to, I'm like you, very much an auditory thinker, listener, whatever. I use Whisper, WISPR, because I find out it has the fewest number of like proofreading mistakes. Like it puts the punctuation exactly where it should go.
You know what? I want to say I think I just discovered Whisper. I was trying it not too long ago.
I'm a fan. And because again, I'm usually typing text style, whatever, lots of typos, some great typos. So I use Whisper a lot, but my agent, Danbot, his job is to take my emotional, I'll just be like, tell this idiot to go blah, 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 blah. And then he'll spin it. His job is to make it sound, I'm like, okay, now imagine you're Marcus Aurelius and you need to actually make this much more philosophically less emotional, but they won't believe it's me unless you swear once when you come back with it.
I love it.
It comes back, it's like, all right, be really productive, not emotional, but swear once. What my team says it's actually more helpful than I am. So it has all my writing samples. It has all the marketing and other reports I have to plug into. I'm like, go talk to Danbot. Though it actually did me a pretty damn good.
The other tool that I just discovered that I really like is Granola. I use it for all of my video meetings. So Granola is a little bit like Otter, or, it'll transcribe and everything, but it'll do it to where the window doesn't pop up where you see like Monica's like transcribing bot or whatever. It does it in the background, but it also will, if you step away and come back, you can tell it like, what did I miss? And it'll say, Dan said this, Dan said that, but then you can say, if you're like, oh, what smart thing can I say? Or like if somebody asked a question, you can literally like be chatting with it at the same time. And it'll give you like, oh my gosh, I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. Like I know the research, but I want to make sure I don't misquote the data. You can literally ask it and if you've trained it or if it has information in there, it'll pop it up. And then you can like respond with like the evidence right there. It's really cool. You can like chat while you're in the meeting. So
love it. Clever. I'm a fan. I'll go check those ones out. Thank you. I always appreciate those. Let's see. Where can people find you, Monica? Where's the best place to get in touch?
LinkedIn I'm always on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. It's the Monica Marquez, but I have a website. It's called themonicamarquez.com. My weekly newsletter is called AI, where I kind of just share tips and tricks and some of the new tools that I'm testing out, kicking the tires on, what I'm finding that I like, and prompts and things that people should start trying in their workplace. And yeah, just reach out to me. I'm usually pretty good of, responding to direct messages in that way. And I love engaging with people and always learning about the new tools. People will tell me, "Hey, try this out," and I'll be the first the first early adopter to go, check it out.
I love it. Well, you're a delightful human. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Again, for what it's worth, anybody listening, this stuff is hard, and it is one of those. I won't say thankless almost, where I'm just like, heads up, you're going to do way more of this change management stuff than you think you will.
Oh, absolutely.
It is a lot of work. It is critical to actually doing any AI enablement in those organizations. So,
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Monica.
Dan, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your platform and gifted me some of the time to chat with you, and maybe hopefully leave some pearls of wisdom for your audience.
Oh, I got plenty. Thank you kindly. I appreciate it.